The officer dragged Atlas, a PTSD service dog, into his patrol car while my decorated veteran son collapsed trembling on our lawn. The HLA president smirked victoriously. After prosecuting federal cases for 15 years, I was watching rights being trampled in my own front yard. They had no idea who they were messing with. Michael returned from Afghanistan with invisible wounds. 3 tours, a silver star, and a mind fractured by what he'd witnessed. The nightmares came first, then the panic attacks. Simple things, a car backfiring, crowds, even certain smells, could trigger episodes that left him paralyzed with terror. Atlas changed everything. The golden retriever, specially trained for PTSD support, could sense Michael's anxiety building before even he could. A gentle nudge, pressure against his leg, or placing his head on Michael's lap during flashbacks. Atlas became his bridge back to normalcy. After my wife's death last year, we needed a fresh start. Pine Grove Estate seemed perfect. Quiet streets, good neighbors, excellent veterans hospital nearby. The sales agent raved about their tight-knit community values. I deliberately kept my profession private during our HOA interview. 20 years as a federal prosecutor had taught me people behave differently around legal authority. I wanted genuine acceptance from Michael and Atlas, not special treatment because of my position. For 2 weeks, things seemed promising. Michael even ventured outside with Atlas, his hand steady on the service dog's harness, steps becoming more confident. I thought we'd finally found healing. I couldn't have been more wrong. The letter arrived exactly 3 days after Michael and Atlas's first neighborhood walk. Slipped under our door like a covert threat. Violation, unauthorized animal on premises. $750 fine. Immediate removal required. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but from a familiar rage I hadn't felt since prosecuting civil rights violations in court. I immediately requested an emergency meeting with the HOA board, bringing Atlas's service animal certification and ADA documentation. Margaret Wilson, the HOA president, barely glanced at the papers before sliding them back with manicured fingernails. Her pearl necklace gleamed under the fluorescent lights of the community center as she leaned forward. "Your situation doesn't exempt you from our covenant," she said, eyes narrowing at Michael, who sat quietly beside me. Atlas lay perfectly still at his feet, the very picture of a trained service animal. Some residents find certain conditions unsettling. The visibility of it all. The Americans with Disabilities Act specifically protects service animals. I explained, keeping my voice level. Federal law supersedes HOA regulations. Margaret exchanged glances with her board members. We had other residents attempt to claim special status before Mr. Parker. This is an exclusive community. Rules maintain our standards. That's Dr. Parker. Corrected one board member quietly, recognition dawning. Margaret's eyebrow arched slightly. Your profession doesn't grant exemptions here. This isn't your courtroom. As we left, Michael whispered, "Dad, why do they hate Atlas so much?" I couldn't tell him the truth. That Atlas wasn't the problem. In Margaret's eyes, it was Michael's PTSD that threatened her perfect community. What followed was a calculated campaign of intimidation that would have impressed even the most seasoned criminals I'd prosecuted. Security cameras, coincidentally installed, faced our home. Neighbors documented our every move. Smartphones raised whenever Michael and Atlas stepped outside. 3 anonymous calls to animal control claimed Atlas was aggressive toward children, all dismissed after inspectors found a perfectly trained service animal. But each visit left Michael more anxious, his nightmares intensifying. "They're watching us, Dad," he whispered one night, the hypervigilance from his combat days returning. Atlas sensed his distress, pressing against him as Michael's breathing quickened. When Michael attempted to join neighborhood veterans at the community pool, Margaret personally intervened, loudly announcing that his special needs require supervision at all times. She made a show of escorting him out, explaining to onlookers that liability concerns necessitated such measures. "I don't understand," Michael said that night, voice breaking as Atlas rested his head on his lap. "I've never done anything to these people. Atlas never barks or causes problems." I documented everything meticulously, Voice recordings, emails, photographs, witness statements from sympathetic neighbors brave enough to speak with us. A federal prosecutor knows exactly what constitutes harassment and discrimination. The HOA began issuing new emergency regulations targeting us specifically. All animals must be registered with DNA samples. Residents with special accommodations must submit monthly medical verification. Service animals must wear muzzles in common areas. Each violation carried increasing fines, now totaling thousands. When I formally contested them, Margaret responded with a letter stating, "The board finds your constant complaints disruptive to community harmony. Further disputes may result in lien proceedings." One evening, I found Michael sitting alone in the dark, Atlas's head in his lap. They want us gone because I'm broken, don't they? That night, I made 2 calls. Yesterday began like any ordinary Tuesday. Michael had therapy at the VA hospital, so I dropped him and Atlas off before heading to court. I was prosecuting a complex interstate trafficking case, the kind that requires complete focus. When my clerk rushed in during recess, phone in hand, I knew something was wrong. "Mr. Parker, emergency, your son just called." Michael's voice trembled through the speaker. "Dad, they're here. Police and animal control. Margaret is saying Atlas attacked someone. They're trying to take him away." I could hear the commotion, multiple voices, Atlas's confused whining and Margaret's shrill accusations cutting through it all. Michael's breathing was becoming erratic, the beginning of a PTSD episode. "Michael, stay calm. Put Atlas on his lead and show them his service vest and ID. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't let them take him without proper documentation." As I raced home, Margaret's plan became clear. She had orchestrated an emergency HOA vote regarding dangerous animals, precisely when she knew I'd be in court. The community newsletter announced it with barely 24 hours' notice, deliberately misdelivered to our neighbor's mailbox instead of ours. Then her checkmate move, calling police with claims that Atlas had threatened a child during his morning walk. No witnesses, no evidence, just her word against the disabled veterans. By the time I turned onto our street, a small crowd had gathered. Officer Bryant stood beside his patrol vehicle, its rear door open, Atlas already halfway loaded inside. Michael sat disoriented on our front lawn, rocking back and forth, trapped in a flashback, without Atlas to ground him. His service dog tags lay thrown carelessly aside. Margaret was addressing the gathering neighbors, her voice pitched to Carrie. The dog lunged at the Peterson boy. "We've had concerns for months. Just because he's a veteran doesn't mean we should risk community safety." Several neighbors nodded in agreement. Michael called out from the ground, "That's impossible. Atlas was on my left side the entire time. He never breaks position, he's trained. See how emotional he gets?" Margaret interrupted. "This is exactly the kind of instability we're concerned about." I approached slowly, taking in every detail. 15 years as a federal prosecutor had taught me the importance of timing. "Officer," I said calmly, "may I ask what's happening here?" The officer, a man in his late 40s with a stiff posture, cleared his throat. "Sir, we receive reports on an aggressive animal. I'm just following protocol." Margaret stepped forward, a self-satisfied smirk playing at her lips. "Finally, we're addressing the situation. You were warned, Mr. Parker. Rules exist for everyone's protection." I looked at my son, still trapped in his flashback, reaching blindly for his service dog, his entire world being torn away by neighborhood prejudice disguised as policy. "Officer Bryant," I said, my voice steady, "before you continue, I'd like to understand the specific complaint that authorized the seizure of a service animal." The officer hesitated. "Sir, I have a report of aggressive behavior toward a minor." "And what evidence supports this claim? Any witnesses besides the complainant? Any history of previous incidents? Any actual contact or injury?" Officer Bryant shifted uncomfortably. "Well, no physical contact was reported, but..." Mrs. Peterson nudged her son forward. "Tell the officer, Tommy." The child, no older than 6, looked up confused. The dog looked at me. Silence fell over the group. From the patrol car, Atlas strained toward Michael, sensing his distress. 15 years of judicial restraint evaporated in an instant. Officer Bryant, I said, voice deadly calm, I have information that will significantly change how you proceed in the next 30 seconds. Margaret stepped between us. Don't try to intimidate him. The law is clear about dangerous animals. Yes, I replied, meeting her gaze directly. The law is absolutely clear, and you're about to learn exactly how clear it is. I removed my overcoat, revealing the suit I'd worn to court, and reached for my credentials. Officer, I'm Federal Prosecutor Samuel Parker, Eastern District. That service animal is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and what's happening here constitutes criminal discrimination against a disabled veteran. The crowd fell completely silent. Furthermore, I continued, my voice carrying across the now hushed gathering. I've been recording and documenting this entire harassment campaign for the past 3 months. Today's events now constitute evidence in what will become a federal civil rights violation case. Margaret's face transformed from smug to horror as the implications dawned on her. You never said you were a prosecutor, she stammered. And you never said you were targeting my son because of his disability. I replied, yet here we are. Officer Bryant immediately stepped back from his vehicle. Sir, I deeply apologize. This should never have happened. Atlas bolted from the patrol car directly to Michael, pressing against him as my son wrapped his arms around his guide dog, relief washing over his face. Suddenly, 3 neighbors stepped forward. The Johnsons, whose adopted children had been denied pool access. Mr. Rivera, whose mother's wheelchair ramp had been cited as a visual nuisance. Mrs. Patel, whose religious holiday decorations had resulted in escalating fines. It wasn't just them, Mrs. Patel said quietly. She's been doing this to many of us. Margaret's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. This is my community, she hissed. I've worked for years to maintain its standards. Your vendetta, I said evenly, just triggered a federal investigation into this entire HOA. Everyone involved will be subpoenaed. That night, the emergency community meeting was standing room only. Neighbors who had avoided eye contact for months now approached us, some with apologies, some with outrage. The clubhouse buzzed with decades of buried grievances suddenly finding voice. Margaret arrived flanked by 2 board members. Her composure recovered, but her authority shattered. She took her position at the podium as if this were any normal HOA meeting. Today's unfortunate incident has been resolved, she began, her voice clipped. Officer Bryant misunderstood community protocols regarding animals. That's not true, the officer himself interrupted from the back of the room. I was explicitly told to remove a dangerous animal. The complaint came directly from you, Ms. Wilson. Before Margaret could respond, Mrs. Davidson, our 78-year-old neighbor, stood shakily. For 3 years, I've been fined for having my grandson visit more than twice a month, she said, her voice trembling. Margaret said children reduced the community's mature atmosphere. One by one, residents rose to speak. A dozen stories followed, each more disturbing than the last. A former board member admitted, Margaret explicitly said at a closed meeting that the right kind of residents don't need accommodations. The vote was unprecedented in Pine Grove's history. Unanimous dissolution of the current HOA board, freezing of all HOA funds pending investigation, formation of a resident committee to establish new governance. 6 months later, I stand on my porch watching something I never thought I'd see. Michael and Atlas leading a community walk promoting veteran awareness. Dozens of neighbors, many who witnessed his humiliation that day, now walk beside him, listening attentively. Pine Grove has transformed. The clubhouse, once reserved exclusively for approved gatherings, hosts weekly veteran support groups. Michael found unexpected purpose, establishing a youth advocacy program teaching disability rights and community responsibility. Your story changed everything, Dad, Michael tells me, Atlas steadied aside. People need to hear what happened here. So I'm sharing this with you now. Have you witnessed injustice in your community? What would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, those who misuse authority against the vulnerable never anticipate the day when true power reveals itself. The power, justice, compassion, and a community standing as one.